I'm here at the Trail to Tears State Park just north of Cape Girardeau in Missouri, and behind me is the Mississippi River, the greatest river in North America. I'm standing here today to just kind of reflect on what it would have been like for the Cherokee Indians to be disarmed and be forced out of their land. Directly behind me originally was Green's Ferry, where they were all forced across. Many of them froze and drowned, many of them died, and it was right in this area that hundreds, if not thousands, of Cherokee Indians died along their way from Georgia and the Appalachian Mountains to Oklahoma. Now, I take this a little bit personal because I'm part Cherokee and part Euro-Mutt, but my father to this day still owns the land that his great-great-grandfather was given in Oklahoma by the federal government. Now, a lot of people kind of look at the Cherokee Indians like they were just some wild savages hanging out and they were forced to leave. But the reality was they were very successful business owners. Many of them owned coal mines, and it wasn't until they finally discovered gold in the Appalachian Mountains north of Georgia that the federal government surveyed the land, cut it off in 1 mile by 1 mile squares all the way down to 40-acre squares, and all that land was no longer owned by the Indians. Now, this just didn't go that quick. It originally started with laws being passed that forbid the Indians from suing white people. On top of that, eventually laws were passed for disarmament. And this disarmament didn't go very smoothly. What the soldiers would typically do is surround a home, and they didn't live in teepees, they lived in actual stick-built homes. They lived in cities, they wore suits, they wore ties. They were very successful business people. Again, primarily because of the coal industry. And they would surround these homes and eventually just surprise a family, completely disarm them, and nobody ever really saw any of that coming. And eventually, after disarmament and after the laws forbidding people to sue, there was also a law passed that said that any Indian contract between an Indian and a white man was completely void. So any contracts they may have had on their land is completely void at this point as well. And finally, they were forced to up and leave. And this didn't go very well either. Gold was discovered in Georgia in 1815, and it wasn't until 1838 that troops started sending the Cherokee out. Now, a lot of the Cherokee did flee to the hills, and they kind of did guerrilla warfare for a while, but eventually a treaty was passed that said if they would surrender, they would be forgiven of their crimes. Unfortunately for them, when they surrendered, they were shot. In October of 1838, this mass exodus from Georgia to Oklahoma began. 13,000 Cherokee Indians were forced out of their homes after several years of disarmament. Now, if we believe we live in a time where disarmament is not a threat, you're fooling yourself. Regardless of where in the world you live, whether you live in Europe, Asia, South America, North America, or Africa, if your government is disarming you, you're just heading this same direction. It may seem like a wise idea and it may seem peaceful, especially with all the gun crime out there, but I'm telling you, you're heading towards something like the Cherokee Indians experienced. And here in America, it is very important that we protect our Second Amendment rights. A lot of times when we see gun crime in America, half the country calls for tighter gun restrictions. But it's very important that we always look at the history and what this country has gone through when people groups have been disarmed. Disarming mainstream America is only going to lead to a tighter grip by the federal government. Originally, the Second Amendment was passed to allow guys like me and guys and girls like you to be able to protect ourselves and our family, not just from criminals, but from tyrants in the government. If you don't think it'll ever happen in America, you just simply got to look at the past. Directly behind me, this is a massive river. Just sitting up here on top of this mountain, it's freezing cold. It's very windy. I couldn't imagine actually being in the water with my children and crossing this river just to find it to these woods and having a hike over mountain after mountain after mountain just to get to the plains. It's a very treacherous journey. It's no wonder so many thousands of Indians died, not just along the way, but when they got there. It wasn't a peaceable thing and they didn't want to move. They were forced to move because they were disarmed. If they were a heavily armed militia, that would have never happened. So it's very important in America that we keep our firearms, and not just any old firearm, that we keep firearms that are equivalent to any military firearm out there. Things like this concern you or too, definitely support your Second Amendment, definitely join the NRA. It's very important that this type of thing never happen in America again. If you like this video, click like and subscribe.